Hey everyone! Now that the Chasm has been out for over 2 weeks, I thought it would be a good time to go back and review the lore from the patch 2.6 Archon quest. There's a lot of things we learned from Dainsleif, and I hope to bring some of my own thoughts, analysis, and theories to the table. So to kick off our discussion, let's go over a quick summary of what happens during the Requiem of the Echoing Depths questline. The Archon quest starts off with Paimon and the Traveler meeting up with Katheryne from the Adventurers Guild to accept a commission. Katheryne tells them about the recent issues at the Chasm and makes some very sus remarks, which we will talk about later in this video. When Paimon and the Traveler make it to the Chasm, they learn from Yuehui that large groups of Hilichurls have been going into the Chasm. Strangely, after entering the Chasm, these Hilichurls are never to be seen again. As such, Yuehui sent out a commission to the Adventurers Guild to see if this situation poses a danger to mining operations within the region. After learning this information, the Traveler then works with Zhichong to break the seal on the Chasm and begin mapping out the caves below. Unfortunately, I won't be going in depth into the Chasm Delver's World Quest, simply because it would make this video way too long. Also, based on how things ended, it sounds like this is an ongoing questline, so I might wait a bit more before covering it. After entering the Chasm and solving a few puzzles with Zhichong, the Traveler and Paimon come across a set of upside-down ruins. It is at this moment that Dainsleif appears from an abyssal portal. Surprised to see each other, Dainsleif, Paimon, and the Traveler take some time to go over what happened since they last saw each other. Paimon asks Dainsleif if he knows what is going on with the Hilichurls at the Chasm. Dain then explains that something at the Chasm is lessening the effects of the curse placed on the people of Khaenri'ah. Because of this, many dying Hilichurls come to the Chasm to experience some peace before their lives come to an end. That being said, Dain suspects that the ruins and gathering of the Hilichurls must be somehow linked to the Abyss Order. While investigating this matter, they are attacked by the Serpent Knights, which the Traveler swiftly defeats. But just as another group of Serpent Knights is about to attack the group, they quickly withdraw after the commander of the Knights appears. Dainsleif remarks that this knight seems quite familiar to him and explains to the Traveler that these knights were once the royal guard of Khaenri'ah. As they venture deeper into the ruins, the group comes across the fountain that is behind the weakening of the curse. It's at this time that the commander of the knights appears again, beckoning for the Traveler, Dainsleif, and Paimon to follow him. Dain immediately recognizes this Serpent Knight as Halfdan, a former comrade of his in the elite guard. Following Halfdan, they arrive at a Hilichurl camp where the Traveler finds a flower known as the Inteyvat. The Traveler experiences a flashback of his sibling who placed the flower there. In the flashback, the Traveler finds out that his sibling in the Abyss Order planned to use the fountain to reverse the curse of immortality on the Hilichurls in the hopes of restoring the homeland. After a discussion with Dainsleif about the plan, the Traveler decides to team up with him to stop the ritual. However, the Abyss Order attempts to stop them by sending an Abyss Herald who they're able to defeat. Unfortunately, it's too late as the Abyss Lector has already initiated the ritual. The ritual itself causes untold suffering for Dainsleif, the Serpent Knights, the Hilichurls, and anyone afflicted by the curse from Celestia. Since the Traveler is unaffected, he attempts to interrupt the ritual by defeating the Abyss Lector. While they are successful in defeating the Lector, Halfdan jumps onto the device, temporarily stalling the ritual. Dainsleif and the Traveler take this opportunity to destroy the other smaller devices scattered throughout the ruins to end the ritual. Once this is done, they return to the fountain to find Halfdan laying dead upon the device. Just as they are about to leave, Halfdan's soul emerges from his body and salutes Dainsleif. They exchange greetings and Halfdan asks Dainsleif if Khaenri'ah still stands. Dainsleif then thanks Halfdan for his service and reassures him that Khaenri'ah survived. With that, Halfdan's soul finds peace and passes on. After this emotional exchange, Dainsleif tells the Traveler that they still need to stop the Abyss Order and that he must pick a side. Paimon invites Dainsleif to join the Traveler in exploring the Chasm, however he declines, citing that he must recover from the harm caused by the ritual. With that, they part ways and the Traveler continues on with his journey of the Chasm. With this super condensed summary out of the way, I'm sure you can see there's a ton to talk about when it comes to the Archon quest. So let's start off this conversation by talking about Katheryne. First of all, Katheryne tells us that she went to Inazuma to pull a fortune slip. She is able to do this in a single day, suggesting that she is somehow able to travel quickly, possibly through the use of portals or waypoints. She then tells the traveler that the Shrine Maiden told her it was the season of unexpected reunion. I found this line from Katheryne to be particularly interesting because it ties into later events of the questline. For example, there is the unexpected reunion between the traveler and Dainsleif, but also the reunion between Halfdan and Dainsleif. Lastly, Katheryne bids us farewell, but adds that we're bound for the abyss this time. I found this particularly strange because it seems like no one else in Liyue is aware of the abyssal corruption and creatures that could be found in the chasm. As far as the chasm exploration crew and the Chising are concerned, they are trying to investigate the mysterious forces at work in the chasm. The only party that seems to be aware of the abyssal corruption is the Fatui. But how does this tie into Katheryne? Well, as you may or may not be aware, the Adventurers Guild is actually headquartered in Snezhnaya. I found this particularly odd because it seems like almost no one in Teyvat questions their motives. Given what Katheryne said in the Archon quest, I wonder if the guild is somehow part of or involved with the Fatui. Additionally, there are many theories surrounding Katheryne herself. Many believe that she is an automaton or robot. When walking past Katheryne, you can occasionally hear her saying things such as error or rebooting, which only adds to the mystery behind her. I've always thought that the Katherynes may be part of a hive mind, therefore they are able to share information with each other. I believe that is how the Katheryne in Liyue was able to tell the traveler about the fortune slips from Inazuma. My theory here is that the Katheryne in Inazuma was the one who went to the Grand Narukami Shrine. Because all the other Katherynes are connected, the one in Liyue was able to experience this event simultaneously. This would explain how the Katheryne in Liyue was able to know of the fortune, and would also resolve the issue of how she was able to make it to Inazuma and back in less than a day. As always, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on the Adventurers Guild and Katheryne. Do you think there's a greater conspiracy at work? Let me know down in the comments below. Next, I wanted to touch upon the Hilichurls. When the traveler gets to the chasm, he and Paimon learn that large groups of Hilichurls have been going into the chasm only to never be seen again. We later learn from Dainsleif that these Hilichurls were once residents of Conria. During the cataclysm, the people were cursed with immortality and transformed into monsters by Celestia. As time passes, the Hilichurls' lives slowly come to an end due to erosion, and when their time is up, they go to the chasm to experience relief from the curse due to the fountain's mysterious power. The lore behind the Hilichurls is extremely sad and explains the sudden surge in their population after the cataclysm. There are some lore entries that point to the idea that the Hilichurls existed before the cataclysm, so it's possible that Celestia has transformed prior civilizations into these creatures, which is pretty messed up. But I'm getting a bit off topic. Let's go back to talking about the curse. Initially, it sounds like the curse simply turned the people of Conria into monsters and prolonged their lives. However, Dainsleif expands on this, saying,
"It is a way of branding us at the level of the fate of the world itself. When a god applies a curse, it takes effect at a higher level of reality than the person themselves. Even now, I can feel the curse slowly permeating my entire being, becoming part of me, slowly but surely replacing me."
I found this quote to be particularly interesting because the curse ties the people of Conria to the fate of the world. So what does this mean and what is fate? Well, fate is the idea that everything is predetermined and that events happen outside of one's control. I believe this is at the core of the Abyss Order's Luma Fate plan. Ultimately, the Abyss Order wants to destroy Celestia so that they can reweave fate and determine their own destinies. Currently, the control over the fate of the world lies in Celestia's hands. However, there are beings that are able to escape this, like the Traveler and the God of Time, Istaroth. I could talk about this for hours, and I do touch on this idea in my video on the Raiden Shogun, Makoto, and Istaroth, so be sure to check that out if you're interested. But back to the curse. Since the curse replaces the very being of an individual, it's impossible to cleanse because that which was replaced by the curse can never be brought back. I would compare this to setting a forest on fire. Whatever the fire has burned away can never be brought back. even if you put the fire out, you can't restore the forest to how it was before the fire. This is why Dainsleif is doubtful that cleansing the curse will save his people. As the curse roots itself in a plane higher than reality, it means that the effects of the curse are unavoidable and impossible to cleanse. On the topic of the Hilichurls and the curse, we also have to bring up the idea of erosion. Throughout our adventures in Genshin, we hear about erosion, but we never really have a good explanation of what it is. In the Archon quest, Dain tells us that over time the body and soul will slowly fade away. Although the Hilichurls were cursed with immortality, they still suffer from erosion, so as centuries pass, their bodies and soul decay before their eyes. If you think about it, it's like having to watch yourself rot away until there's nothing left. It's a pretty cruel way to die if you really think about it. At the center of the events at the Chasm is the fountain and the underground city. According to Dainsleif, the city and the fountain originated from a civilization older than Khaenri'ah. Based on the architecture, it seems like the city was a contemporary of Surumi Island, Salvindagnir, and Enkanomiya. There are even statues that look pretty similar to those from Enkanomiya. Unfortunately, the faces on the statues have been destroyed, but my suspicion is that they are supposed to represent the four shades created by Faunus. Based on this alone, it seems like we can connect this city to the single unified culture that existed before the arrival of Celestia. As for the fountain, I'll touch on it later in the video. Now the next thing I wanted to talk about is a flower called the Inteyvat and the Traveler's Flashback. At the Hilichurl camp, we learned that this flower was placed there by the Traveler's sibling. After taking a look at its design, I realized that I incorrectly identified the flowers found in the Inteyvat chapter storyline preview as Cecilia's. Given that we're supposed to end our journey in Khaenri'ah, the meadow we see in the trailer is actually a field of Inteyvats. While investigating the flower, the Traveler experiences a flashback where he sees his sibling speaking with an Abyss Herald. From this memory, we learn of the siblings' true intentions, which is to confront the heavenly principles and revive the homeland. I think it's really interesting that the Traveler's sibling refers to Khaenri'ah as the homeland. It makes me wonder if that was one of the first places visited by the Traveler's sibling when they first landed in Inteyvat. It would definitely explain why they're currently leading the Abyss Order. Another thing that caught my attention here is that the ultimate plan of the Abyss Order seems to align with the Fatui. They both want to confront the heavenly principles. Initially, I found it strange that these two factions aren't allies, but I think it goes down to how they want to go about toppling Celestia. The Abyss Order seems to be more open to harnessing the power of the Abyss and using its corrupting powers to destroy Celestia, whereas the Fatui seem to be a bit more restrained in that regard. Either way, I'm sure we'll learn more about it as time goes on. Next up, let's talk about the ritual and the fountain. The purpose of the ritual conducted by the Abyss Order was to cleanse the people of Khaenri'ah from their curse. As the Abyss Order activates the device, it sends a bright yellow beam into the fountain. This caught me by surprise because so far the power of the Abyss has been associated with the night and darkness. So when the Lector was channeling a beam of bright yellow light, it seemed to be different from anything else we've seen so far in the game. Additionally, the device itself has an insignia on it that takes the shape of a sun. According to various lore entries from Enkanomiya and the new artifact set, Faunus was associated with the sun and his three shades with the night sky. If this is the case, could the Abyss Order have learned how to harness relics and powers from Faunus? Hopefully, we'll get more clarity on this as we encounter more members of the Abyss Order. Additionally, when the ritual was underway, all the creatures and beings afflicted by the curse from Celestia experienced great pain. This included the Serpent Knights, Hilichurls, and Dainsleif. However, the Abyss Lector didn't seem to experience any pain at all. In fact, he doesn't react at all to the ritual, much like the Traveler. Because of this, I believe that the Abyss Order was somehow able to escape the curse through abyssal corruption. Because if they were truly affected by the curse, they should have reacted in the same way that the Serpent Knights and Hilichurls did. How they were able to escape the curse is pretty unclear. One thing we do know though is that the Abyss stands in opposition to Celestia, so it's possible that the abyssal corruption actually protected the Abyss Order from the effects of the curse. Now, I want to talk briefly about Halfdan, however, I'm working on a Serpent Knight video, so I'll most likely elaborate more on him then. During the questline, we learned that Halfdan was one of the elite soldiers in the Royal Guard. When the Cataclysm fell upon Conria, Dainsleif, also known as the Twilight Sword, ordered the Royal Guard to protect the people at all costs. Ultimately though, Conria was destroyed and the people were cursed. Because of this, Halfdan and the Royal Guard were transformed into the Black Serpent Knights, and for the next 500 years they would suffer from the curse and continue to guard the Hilichurls, or former common folk of Conria. I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but it seems like the Serpent Knights aren't fully conscious. What I mean by this is that it seems like they are not aware that the people they are defending today were transformed into Hilichurls, and they don't seem to be aware that Conria fell. This is evident through the Serpent Knights telling the Hilichurls to run and constantly seeking to defend them. Halfdan also seems to be unaware that Conria was destroyed, as he asks Dainsleif about Conria's fate before his soul passes on. Additionally, Dainsleif confirms this idea, stating that the Serpent Knights are eternally stuck living out the events of the Cataclysm. This got me thinking about the Hilichurls as well. It seems like they too may not be fully conscious about their situation. However, they are different from the Serpent Knights in that if they see their own reflection in the water, they experience great distress knowing what they've turned into. But then what about Dainsleif? Well, he's different because he's maintained consciousness throughout the centuries. He lives every day fully aware of his surroundings and of the current events and state of the world. According to his dialogue, it sounds like there is an unknown requirement that must be maintained to retain self-awareness and self-consciousness despite being cursed by Celestia. Lastly, let's talk about Dainsleif and his character development in the story. Compared to the Traveler and his sibling, Dain maintains a pretty nihilistic view of the world. He feels as though fighting against the heavenly principles is hopeless. Additionally, he views the Hilichurls and Serpent Knights as simply monsters, even though they were all once human. I believe he does this to cope with the fact that he was powerless to save his people. This contrasts with the Traveler and his sibling's view of the world. For example, the Traveler's sibling wants vengeance for Conria's destruction and is looking to confront the heavenly principles and reweave fate, hence the Luma Fate operation. The Traveler is still pretty undetermined, but seeing as he started his journey in present-day Teyvat, I believe he will ultimately seek to free the 7 nations and Conria from the heavenly principles. And so here we have 3 differing worldviews on Teyvat. But anyways, I got a bit off topic here. Instead of confronting his feelings, Dain avoids them completely by writing off the Hilichurls and Serpent Knights as simple monsters. When he meets Halfdan in the ruins, he has to confront his feelings for the first time in hundreds of years. In this situation, he's forced to view these quote-unquote monsters as people he once knew. And so when Halfdan tells Dainsleif he's failed him, I think that's when Dainsleif realized that he actually failed his own people. You see, there were some bad actors like Rheindotter, but there were just as many people who were innocent who were just simply trying to live out their lives. By writing them off as just monsters, Dainsleif essentially gave up his humanity. When he finally has to face his friend, Dainsleif realizes he needs to face this issue head-on and embrace his humanity and his people. With that, Dainsleif thanks Halfdan for defending his people and fulfilling his duties as the Royal Guard. But he takes this a step further. When asked if Conria still stands, Dainsleif makes an interesting choice. Based on how he acted previously, I would have guessed that he would have said no. Instead, he tells Halfdan that Conria still stands. For me, this moment was so powerful because it really shows a change in character for Dainsleif. These aren't just monsters, these were people. Innocent people that he lived alongside with before it was all brutally destroyed. And it's in this moment that Dainsleif finally embraces his humanity and allows himself to mourn the loss from that fateful day. It was a really profound way to end the Archon quest, and I hope we continue to get more quests like this in the future. And that is it for my analysis of the patch 2.6 Archon quest. If you guys have your own thoughts on this questline, let me know down in the comments section below. If you guys like my videos and my channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Peace!